All right, my friends, welcome back. I don't know if you are aware of it or not, but May is actually Get Caught Reading Month. If you've never heard of it before, let me tell you what the description online says of it. It says, May is National Get Caught Reading Month, a nationwide campaign designed to promote the joy of reading for all ages. Celebrated throughout May, it encourages schools, libraries, and families to catch people reading in creative or unexpected places. It emphasizes making reading fun rather than a chore. Now, I've actually done a video on Get Caught Reading Month before, but I think it's been a couple of years. And I always say I'm going to do more reading or more book videos, and I just never get around to it. And quite honestly, sometimes there's a lull in my reading that I feel like kind of hampers me from being able to pump them out as much as I would like to. And a lot of these YouTube channels that do, like, what I guess they call it booktube, book-oriented channels. These people read a lot. I mean, they read numerous books every month. I don't do that. There was a time when I would read a book a week. That's just too much for me. When you have a family and your attention has to be given to small kids. My kids are all grown now, but at the time when I was doing that, it was very hard. My wife often thought my books were my mistresses. That's how she referred to them. And she wasn't really far off. So reading can be an impediment as well as we speak of it in many cases. If you take it too far, if you get excited about it, and you take a challenge, you got to consider what else is trying to capture your attention at the same time. It's a funny way to start off a video, right? You would think it'd be more positive and on the side of reading. And it is, this video is, but just the way I started, it makes it sound like I'm providing negative reasons, reasons to not do it. But that's not really what I'm doing. I'm just trying to convey that there has to be a balance. And when we talk about reading, when we talk about books, we tend to get excited and say, I'm going to start a reading habit today. So I want to hit on a few things that'll help make that more conducive, probably, to your lifestyle, give you some ideas. Because a lot of people tell me, I don't read, I hate reading. And I think to myself, well, it's just because of the way you're approaching it. If you knew what you could get out of reading, which I think most people do, really, but if they could honestly feel like they could glean something from reading all the time, they would always want to do it. But there's something stopping them, right? And so time is of the essence. I mean, when you're an adult and you say, I don't have enough time for this, that, and the other, you really mean it, don't you? We think of other people when they say, I don't have time to do this or that, we think they're just making excuses, and in some cases they might be. In a lot of cases we might be, but what we're really doing is we're prioritizing matters in our life. We might be making time spent with family more important, or maybe another hobby, or maybe we're just making time for relaxing in a way that we don't have to try to get used to. We're already doing it, like watching TV, watching movies. I know people that do that. That's what they do. Instead of reading books, they just watch a lot of social media. And so that's fine. I'm not going to harp on that because it is what it is. I think that you do have to make time to relax. So we do all make time. I don't think we can all accuse people just making excuses, because that casts a negative light on all of it. And I don't think you need to do that. I just think you need to consider whether reading would be worth your time or not. And if it is, how are you going to do it? How are you going to facilitate that? Because that's what it really comes down to. I think we can all find a way to weave it into the fabric of everyday life, honestly. And I think there's a lot of benefits to that. I think that you do become open-minded in a good way. Some people are open-minded in a very bad way, where everything gets in and not enough gets out. But I also do think it helps you to socially relate to others and to life in general. You learn about how to get through life. It doesn't really matter whether you're reading fiction or history, a biography. It doesn't really matter. All of it will help you navigate your way through this really tough experience we call life. I'm convinced of that. And there's too many people that will provide testimony to that to make it hard to argue. And I think that reading will also help you relax in many cases. It's an escape, much the same way watching TV or watching videos on YouTube or whatever it is you do. Maybe you like woodwork. Maybe you like shooting. Maybe you like playing softball. I don't know what it is, but we all have something that distracts us, that relaxes us, that gets our minds off the daily grind, or maybe the turmoils that we're currently experiencing. Well, reading can do that for you too. So I don't want it to sound like reading is a be-all, end-all, but it is a very, I think, in my own estimation, a very crucial part of life. It can be. It's as important as you want it to be, and I think it depends on what you're reading also. We'll touch on some of that hopefully in this video, but you know, I like the title, I like the moniker, or whatever you want to call it, Get Caught Reading Month. They encourage people to find people reading in other than normal places, I guess, right? And I've seen people, and you probably have too, reading in all sorts of environments, right? Busy places where you think, how can they concentrate? Very quiet, still places. Some people like to read in bed. I don't, because I get too sleepy doing that. I get into bed and I automatically want to shut down. I love hearing the bird. But I have been caught reading by a number of people. I usually do a lot of reading at lunchtime, and I can't tell you how many people have wanted to stop and have a conversation with me because I'm reading something. They're fellow readers. And in many cases, they're not fellow readers. There are people who wish they had a healthy reading habit. They desire to have that. So they're somewhat envious, or maybe it's admiration. And I'm not saying anybody deserves it, including me. I'm just saying that this is how people respond to you when they catch you reading. I've told men before, if you want a good way to meet women, read in public. I am dead serious about that. I can't tell you how many women have approached me in a rather innocent way, by the way, okay? So it's not, you know, I am married. It's not like I'm looking for it, but I am saying that if you, as a single man, if you are reading in public, you're probably going to get some ladies approaching you. People are very curious, and women typically read more than men do, so that would explain some of that. But readers like to talk to other readers, and most readers, not all, don't mind being interrupted if it's done cautiously. Like you don't want to come across aggressively and act like you're going to take up someone's time by asking them what they're reading. But you know, you want to stay on task. You want to stay on subject if you're going to interrupt someone reading. But readers actually like to be interrupted if you're going to talk about what they're reading or how they read, what their habits are, and we love talking about that kind of thing. I actually approach other people, not all the time. I mean, I try to read a person's body language. Some people don't want to be interrupted, and you should be able to tell by looking at them whether that's safe to do or not. But get caught reading. Yeah, try approaching someone. If you've ever thought about taking up a reading habit, feel free to walk up to people that are actually in the act of it and say, hey, listen, what are you reading? I've thought about taking up a reading habit. I really need to do, and this is the kind of conversations I do have with people, by the way. What can I do? What can I do to create a good, healthy habit of reading? I'm going to discuss some of that. I'm going to then tell you what I'm reading right now, what I'm currently reading. But yeah, reading is a fantastic thing, because you know what? Humankind hasn't always been able to pick up a book and tap into what else is going on in the world. They've been just, you know, their attention's been focused solely on what's been going on around them immediately. And they had no idea that other people in other parts of the world felt the same way they did, had the same thoughts, you know, they had the same dialogue going on, had the same human problems. But that's what books have enabled us to do. We've only been able to do that for hundreds of years. maybe closer to maybe over 1,000 years, but in some way, but it's been very limited. The further back you go, the more limited it has been. And that's also been a problem. But I think you need to know that reading, the way we do it now, the way you can just walk into a bookstore and pick up any number of books on anything you want to read, is a privilege that most of human history has never been able to tap into. That's the first thing you need to realize. And that you can have access to the minds of millions of others who've experienced the same things you've experienced, who're going through the same things currently that you're going through, have the same interests that you do, and who can educate you, entertain you. And that's what the joy of reading does for you. Okay? So let me tell you what I'm currently reading right now. I always have 4 books going on at a time. Okay? And so 3 of them are always books I haven't read before, and one's a reread. All right? So the first one I'm going to tell you about is called The Essays, a selection. These are Michel de Montaigne's essays. He was a French philosopher and statesman, lived back during the 16th century. Now, I love philosophy, but I don't like reading philosophy all the time. I don't need all of someone else's ideas mucking up the flow of my own, right? I do like Stoicism, and I wouldn't say that Montaigne is a Stoic. I don't know what category philosophy he would fall into, but he's highly relatable. I've said before that Seneca is probably my favorite Stoic philosopher, even more than Marcus Aurelius. I kind of think Marcus Aurelius is a little overrated, but Seneca is my favorite Stoic philosopher. Montaigne, he's my favorite otherwise philosopher. I don't know a better way of putting that. He is so highly relatable. I feel like he thinks like I do. Okay? I think he's a good philosopher for the everyday man. He just makes a lot of sense. And when I see how he writes, I think to myself, you people back then were no different than we are now. So here's what it says on the back of the book. All right? I think this is a great way of just kind of condensing what a book is all about, just giving you what it says on here. And here's why I do it. It's because people have spent a lot of time formulating a good consensus of a book, and it's better just to use their own words. Montaigne was single-handedly responsible for popularizing the essay form. This selection of his highly original essays covers themes such as fathers and children, conscience and cowardice, coaches and cannibals, and above all, himself. Yes, Montaigne admitted, I'm writing about myself. And that's one of the things I like about him. He was a very introspective person. He takes you on his own journey of life and helps you to see what he's really thinking. And I personally find that extremely highly relatable. It's much like the modern day vlogger. And he's really the only philosopher I know that kind of did that. Anyway, so he says, on some lines of Virgil, that's one of his essays, makes a revolutionary case for the equality of the sexes, while on experience, another one of his essays, Montaigne meditates on the right way to live, and other essays explore an age struggling with religious and intellectual strife. These diverse subjects are united by Montaigne's distinctive voice, tolerant, skeptical, humane, humorous, and utterly honest in his pursuit of the truth. So Montaigne was one of the philosophers that was a little more religious, okay? And that's another reason why I find him relatable. He does talk about Christ. I believe he was Catholic. I don't know if he was Roman Catholic, because there was a differentiation between Catholic and Roman Catholic during his times. Catholic was like anything Christian, anything that you could label Christian during that time, even some Protestant sects. But Roman Catholic was Roman Catholic. So I can't really remember whether he's Roman Catholic or not. I think he was. But anyway, he speaks in religious tones. He believes in God. He believes in Jesus. And he kind of draws that into his conversation. And I'm a Christian, so I relate to it in a lot of ways. But I think he has a lot of good things to say. I'm just going to draw at random. And seriously, just at random. This is not prepared. Just at random things that I have highlighted. I highlight constantly in my books, so I can go back and just find things quickly. So I'm going to pull at random a couple things, give you a taste of how he writes. One of the things he says here is, we do not know where death awaits us, so let us wait for it everywhere. To practice death is to practice freedom. A man who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave. Knowing how to die gives us freedom from subjection and constraint. Life has no evil for him who has thoroughly understood that loss of life is not an evil. Okay, let me just go forward a little bit and see what else I've highlighted. Let me pick a different chapter. Okay, on his section on to philosophize is to learn how to die, he said, seeing what advantages death holds, I have deliberately mixed a little anguish into it to stop you from embracing it too avidly or too injudiciously, to lodge you in that moderation which I require of you, neither fleeing from life nor yet fleeing from death. I have tempered them both between the bitter and the sweet. Let me find another one. Okay. In another chapter on educating children, he had written this essay to a woman who had a child, and I believe the father was not in the picture. I don't know if it was through death or what, but he was trying to counsel her on on ways he thought would be good to raise a boy. And he says, he goes, knowing something does not mean knowing it by heart. That simply means putting it in the larder of our memory. That which we rightly know can be deployed without looking back at the model, without turning our eyes back towards the book. In another page, he says, it is unmannerly and impolite to criticize everything which is not to our liking. He's trying to convey to her that she needs to raise a boy that can restrain his judgment and listen more. So here's what he says. I'm going to start over again. It is unmannerly and impolite to criticize everything which is not to our liking. Let him be satisfied with correcting himself without being seen to reproach others for doing things he would not do himself, and without flouting public morality. One should be wise without ostentation or ill will. Let him shun any semblance of impolity or impolitely. I don't know, I'm sure how to say that. Laying down the law, as well as that puerile ambition to wish to appear clever by being different or to earn a name for criticizing or flaunting novelties. And there's so much more. I could go through highlight after highlight after highlight in this book. And I don't know whether those things resonated with you or not, or meant anything to you, but they do to me. And I think when you read a book, you should be approaching it through the lens of trying to learn whatever you can from it, regardless of what it is. But I love Montaigne. I'll put a link for this down below. I highly suggest getting this. This is paperback and put out by Penguin Classics. I love it. I'm only like 132 pages through it. By the way, if you like my reading glasses, these are Foster Grant blue light glasses, whatever the case may be. I'll put a link for these down below. I didn't buy these on Amazon, but I found them on Amazon before I got on here. So I'll put a link for these down below. I really like them a lot. So this book right here, I have actually talked about this book on YouTube before, called The Case of the Murders Dr. Cream. I love this. This is a reread for me, okay? A reread. This is my reread. The Hunt for a Victorian-era Serial Killer. Back during the Victorian times, people were crazy about true crime. They couldn't get enough of it. People would show up in droves to watch what would happen in court. They would show up in droves to watch people be executed or to find out what the final verdict was. And people would be captivated by things like Jack the Ripper and any other serial killer that happened to be around. People just loved the stuff. They ate it up. Well, one of the serial killers that people have not heard of back during the time of Jack the Ripper was of Dr. Cream. And he was less gruesome than Jack the Ripper was. He would poison women. So let me tell you what it says in the back of this book. When a doctor goes wrong, he is the first of criminals, Sherlock Holmes observed. At the time, those words by the world's most famous fictional detective appeared in print. A real-life Canadian doctor was stalking and murdering women in London. Dr. Thomas Neil Cream had been a suspect in the deaths of 2 women in Canada and had killed as many as 4 people in Chicago before he arrived in London in 1891. The Lambeth Poisoner, as he was dubbed in the press, became one of the most prolific serial killers in history. In this compelling book, Dean Job takes readers inside Scotland Yard's desperate search for a killer as brazen and efficient as Jack the Ripper. The first complete account of Dr. Cream's crimes and his many victims, it explores how bungled investigations and the stifling morality and hypocrisy of the Victorian era allowed this monster to kill and kill again. Fascinating book. I had never heard of him before I read this, but I kind of wonder why he hasn't been talked about more often. Kind of like H.H. Holmes and, like I said, Jack the Ripper and whatnot. I think they should make a movie about this guy. He was rather dapper, but he's also crazy, kind of cross-eyed, and he was psychotic, obviously, and very much gave himself away as the criminal itself. And the criminal investigators at the time just weren't linking up correctly or weren't listening or paying attention well enough. It's a crazy story. I love it. Now, the next one I have is a new read for me. The Next Conversation. I'm actually almost done with this book. This is written by Jefferson Fisher. If you don't know who Jefferson Fisher is, you might be kind of missing the boat. He's very, very popular on YouTube right now and Instagram and all forms of social media. Here's a picture of him. Let me show it to you. That's a picture of him. You recognize him now? Probably. He's all over the place. And as soon as you hear him talk, you know you like this guy. He's got a very calm voice, very pleasant smile, just a very serene aspect about him. But he's a trial lawyer, actually, And he gives his story about how he grew up and why what kind of made him and turned him into the man he is now. It says he's a trial lawyer, writer, and speaker whose work to help people communicate during life's everyday arguments and conversations with his practical videos and authentic presence has gained millions of followers around the world, including celebrities and global leaders. He is a sought-after speaker on communication at Fortune 500 companies and government agencies, and hundreds of thousands of people subscribe to his actionable email, newsletter, and podcast. He's a Texas board certified personal injury attorney and the founder of Fisher Firm, where he helps people all over the United States connected to trusted legal services. My mouth is getting kind of dry. Anyway, so this one's called The Next Conversation. Argue less, talk more. And this is what he does. He really helps people to know how to talk to each other in rather difficult situations, right? Arguments, relationships that are boiling over. Maybe you're just trying to strike a business deal. All sorts of situations. Now, I will say this book is a very, very easy read. Okay, in fact, it's hard not to just zip right through it. I'm on page 223. I'm about 85% of the way through it. Here's what it says in the inside leaf. It says, no matter who you're talking to, the next conversation gives you immediately actionable strategies and phrases that will forever change how you communicate. The book does live up to that, by the way. You're going to want to read it. Jefferson Fisher, trial lawyer and one of the leading voices on real-world communication, offers a tried-and-true framework that will show you how to transform your life and your relationships by improving your next conversation. Fisher has gained millions of followers through short, simple, practical videos teaching people how to argue less and talk more. This is kind of reiterating what the back of the book says, but nevertheless, whether it's handling a heated conversation, dealing with a difficult personality, or standing your ground with confidence, his down-to-earth teachings have helped countless people navigate life's toughest situations. Now, for the first time, Fisher has distilled his three-part communication system, which can easily be applied to any situation. I'm kind of fast-forwarding through this a little bit, which is why I got a little bit of a hiccup here. The next conversation will give you practical phrases that will lead to powerful results, from breaking down defensiveness in a hard talk with a family member to finding your assertive voice in the boardroom. Your every word matters, and it does, and by controlling how you communicate every day, you will create waves of positive impact that will resonate throughout your relationships to last a lifetime. Everything you want to say and how you want to say it can be found in The Next Conversation. Very, very true. I love this. In fact, today I was reading on how to frame your conversations. And I thought that was particularly interesting and applicable to me. Okay, so that's that. I saved time, I'm gonna move on. Now, the next thing I'm reading is Uncle John's Weird, Wonderful World. Now, I've got bunches of Uncle John's bathroom readers. What I love about these books is they're chock full of trivia, short stories. I don't mean fictional. Everything in here is like fact, okay? Short trivia, and I mean, it's great. Sometimes they take up a page or two, maybe 3 or 4 pages, and sometimes it's only a few sentences. But this is so full of trivia, true stories, facts, and information. It's all very highly entertaining without going too deep into something. In other words, kind of like the Spark Notes, or what do you call those? Those, you know, a short condensed version of what you need to know. For instance, when the rocket went to the moon lately, just recently, you know, the not rocket, when those astronauts recently flew around the moon, I got into a conversation with my coworkers and talked about, have you ever heard about Project Horizon? This was a space program that was going back on in the 50s, 1950s, and was to establish a military base on the moon. No, they had never heard of it. They weren't really interested in hearing it from me, but I knew about it from these books. And I'll put a link for all these books down below, but I love these. In fact, a lot of the stories I get for my YouTube videos that I use for illustrations, a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them do come from Uncle John's books because, man, they got so many good stories. All right, so here's the thing. You might be thinking to yourself, you know, I don't have a good reading habit. I thought I hated reading, but you know, the truth is I kind of always wanted to read more. I know I need to do it. What do? I don't have a lot of time, Greg. I don't want to get burdened by too much. How should I go about this? Well, let me give you my own personal reading program. And yes, I do have one. Okay, you might be surprised by this. I've talked to people about it before. I'll mention it here again. Here's what I do. One thing you have to understand about me is I don't have a long attention span for reading. I know that might sound incredible after all the things I've just said about reading, but I really don't have a long attention span. So what I do with each and every book, I read out of each of these 4 books, or any 4 books that I happen to be going through at the time. I read 20 minutes a day in each one. 20 minutes per book and 4 different books every day. Now, do I fall off the track sometimes? Yeah, there are days that go by I don't read anything. I mean, I might be out of town. I might be busy with something else, or I might be really worried about something else that I can't devote my mental energy to, and which is not really a good excuse, right? But I might just have something else going on in my life, and I might skip a day or two. Sometimes I skipped a week, but I always get back on track, and that's what I do, because I'm not one of these people that can spend an hour or two reading. My wife can. She can take a big, thick Stephen King book, and she can read that thing through in 24 hours. She doesn't read all the time. In fact, it's very rare that she reads a book anymore, but when she does, she zips right through it. And that's crazy to me. Now, I don't even want to be able to do that. I think I can't devote I can't invest that kind of time. But this is what I do. Now, you could do the same thing. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 1 book. It could be 2 books. It could be whatever you want it to be. You can mix and match the number of books, the kinds of books, the amount of time you spend reading. But when you do this, get different kinds of books. Get fiction. Always find a way to work in fiction, but don't just read all fiction. Work in fiction, work in history, work in science, work in nature, work in biographies, work in self-help. I will say self-help tends to be the one that bores me the quickest, believe it or not. I mean, right? But self-help tends to bore me the fastest because there's a lot of regurgitated information. But I would say always kind of have one somewhere in the mix or on your TBR, your to be read list, okay? And if you want any suggestions on books, I got a ton of books I've read, and I would suggest that one thing you could do is always have a book on hand. Always keep a book in your car. Always keep a book in a bag. I actually have a book bag that I keep with me, that I take with me everywhere. I always have a book in the car. Read during your lunchtime. Make that time, make some time to get away from other people. If you're eating lunch with somebody every day, go, you know what, I don't want to eat. I actually want some time to myself. This would be a good reason to get time to yourself if you're looking for a way. I say, I want to get some time to myself. I'm going to read during lunch, so I'm going to be by myself. Find a designated quiet spot. It could be in your house. It could be outside somewhere. Build one, make one, find one, whatever you got to do. Once you have a designated spot that you go to, that you know you can go to, it'll make some reading something you look forward to. Okay? Get an e-reader. Get a Kindle. I'll put a link for the Kindle I have down in the description below. Download books to that. They're cheap. They're cheap to do that. And then you don't have to worry about turning pages, and you can highlight on Kindle. You can do all sorts of things with Kindle. There's a dictionary attached to it, and you can look up words without having to get a separate dictionary, and that's nice too. Get a Kindle. When you read, when you come across something that you really like, highlight it. Make notes. Get a stamp. I have stamps, maybe not in these books. I do have a stamp in one of these books. My wife got me a stamp a couple years ago, and I stamp all of my books so it makes it a little more personal. Just like that right there. I stamp my books, and I highlight. I get bookmarks, and I know where I'm at all the time. I have a Goodreads app, so it keeps track of where I'm reading, what I'm reading, and how much I've read. If you start implementing these little things, you start creating time in which you can read. And it doesn't even have to be a lot of time. You might say, well, 5 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes doesn't sound like a lot to you. But you'd be surprised at how far you'd get if you did it every day. It relaxes you, it encourages you, entertains you. You know, there's so many things that can be said about reading, I probably don't need to tell you. Either you're a reader and you already know, or you're not and you suspect. Right? So that's what I have to say about reading. I hope that it's helped. It's been a long video, and I just hope that you've watched it all the way through. If you have, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, tap the notification bell, and share this with somebody else. All right, guys, if you have any reading suggestions for me, leave them down in the comments below. I may check it out. All right. Maybe we can start like a reading club, a book club. You know, I've wanted to join the Book of the Month club, but you know what I've noticed about that? The problem is all the books are written by women, and they all look like fluff books. And if you look at pictures of the Book of the Month club, I'm going on a rant here. I'm going on a rant. If you look at pictures of the Book of the Month club, they're all women in the pictures. They're all female authors. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against female authors, but I mean, I can see what's happening here. But nevertheless, I digress. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day. Read on.